I am Abby.
And I'm Helga. And we are Nerd Noir.
Learning to walk again. I believe I've waited long enough. Where do I begin?
We have just been to see Thor at the cinema.
Okay, and what did we think? In general, what do you think?
In general, I really enjoyed it actually. Thor is not my favourite character. I'm a comic book geek, but I'm more DC than Marvel. And to be honest, I've not read much Thor. I know the character, I know of him, I've read little bits of him in the Avengers, but I've not read any straight Thor, and I've always thought he was a bit silly. And not one of the easiest characters to get into, but they actually, perhaps that made it easier for them to make the film, because he's not as much of, fans won't be quite so up in arms if they've changed a tiny bit of his origin story, because his origin story, even in the comics, has been changed.
The only thing I know about Thor, basically, is from the Avengers that we did on Disney.
Move back, mortals. Thor the Thunderer will deal with these villains.
And that's pretty much the extent of my Marvel Thor. I also think that they should have worked more on symbolics and the whole myths and all of that. Like, that would have worked brilliantly.
Yeah, but your attachment to the Norse myths. Helga is Icelandic. So he spent the first 10 minutes going, that's not how you pronounce it. How do you say Mjolnir?
Mjolnir.
Mjolnir.
Mjolnir. This is basic Marvel that I have a problem with, because, like, they should have incorporated the myths much more into what they're doing, because the myths were actually made into a cartoon that was in Denmark. I read them when I was a kid. They're called Valhalla, and they're really good.
Hilset godt folk. Tillad mig at præsentere mig. Jeg Loki, den stormægtige. Og denne her tordenguden Thor, den buldrende og...
Det er godt med dig. Vi sover her i nat.
Men vi har nu ikke meget at byde på, hvad angår føde.
Det er ikke noget problem. Jeg slagter en af mine geder.
Vi kunne lave en...
Men er det ikke synd for den stakkels sked?
Bare rolig. Han er vant til det.
Er du virkelig den store Thor?
I'm always very critical of, like, all these superhero stuff, because they always tend to have these, like, massive fight scenes that are too much and make it too much about the armor, make it too much about the weapons, make it too much about how big and strong this man is. Look at it. And I definitely thought that was the good point of this film. That the fights weren't 15 minutes long, and it wasn't the only fight scene that I had a bit of problems with, and I was like, oh my god, no, this is not going to be like this. Was in the beginning when...
Yeah, I agree with that. It was very chaotic, that first scene.
Yeah. It reminded me of kind of like, because you had the 3D, we unfortunately saw the 3D.
See it in 2D if you can.
Yeah, see it in 2D, because it's not, it save you money.
Yeah.
And focus problems at one point. I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
But the fight in the beginning was just a bit much. Like, you couldn't see who was who. It reminded me a bit of the Transformers, the first one. I haven't seen the second one. Will not, for the life of me, see the third one. We just had to stop my, like, anti-Transformers rambling. But what I was afraid of is they indicated a bit in the first scene, the first fight scene that you see, that it would kind of be a bit like Transformers, a bit too muddled, a bit too people jumping each other, you don't know who's who, a bit too many close-ups, you can't see what is what. But then they didn't have that stupid amount of fight scenes that are not necessary. All the fight scenes were completely necessary, well done, like, well made and all of that, and you can see what's going on. There was some a bit like where Thor's flying, but it looked a bit cool actually, because it was like...
He wasn't flying, he just sort of throws his hammer with it.
Some pretty awesome blush in this one. Even though in the beginning I was kind of a bit like, this is a bit over the top because I kept on having like the old like Nordic mythology and all that in there. But I kind of like the horns in the end.
The Loki horns.
The Loki horns. What do you think, Abs?
I like the costumes. I thought they were, at first, like you say, they are a bit over the top, and it's just kind of...
Yeah, and you're not used
Thor
to
makes
it.
his first appearance wearing his helmet that has these wings on it, which is a bit special. And Loki's helmet is a sort of elaborate wedding hat. But
It's
in a
pretty
good
much
way.
like the royal wedding.
I thought Tom Hiddleston rocked that hat.
He did.
He rocked the hat, and he had a star.
He is hot as well.
Tom Hiddleston.
I have a thing
oddly
for
hot.
baddies.
He was a good baddie.
He was a very good baddie.
We will talk about characters.
Yeah, well, and the costume designer did a very good job on making their costumes, like Sif's costume, the female god, not look like Senior Warrior Princess.
It didn't, although she was called Senior Warrior Princess at one point in the film.
And not have it look, I was afraid because I've seen just some of the trailer of Rene Russo's costume that was a bit too Athena, like a bit too Greek looking, and I didn't like that, but it was a bit, and her hair
the
and
whole
all
look
that.
of it, actually, the look of Asgard and everything was actually, at first it looked a bit too shiny, but then it just, you get used to it, and I actually quite liked it.
Yeah, but I
considering
think
Kenneth Branagh doesn't have any sort of previous form in action movie,
but that's
sort of fantasy, he did well.
Well, now they mentioned that, there's only one thing that really bugged me. It was those bloody shots. Do it now, Abs. If you go like that with the camera, and this was pretty much how everything was. And then it would go like this all the time, and it would go like that, and it was annoying to the point of ridiculousness. You had Asgard, which was like very golden and all that. If they'd done a bit more obscure there, and done the whole views and a bit more long and a bit more beautiful on Earth, and then the gritty one in I don't even know the English word. What are they called? Downstairs.
Where the frost giants live.
Yeah, where the frost giants. Apparently they're called frost giants.
Are they not called frost giants?
No, they're called Jeddah in Danish anyway.
I can't even say that.
No. Well, where they lived, if they'd done like those 3 different worlds and had 3 different camera styles, and that would have actually been cool. But they didn't. Okay, you didn't.
Chris Hemsworth is hot. He is.
He's very.
Takes his shirt
a lot, and it's nice, and he smiles a lot,
and he winks.
And he has a very good smile.
And then he gets muddy.
And this is where we cut over to a picture of him from Comic-Con, where we saw him at Comic-Con, and put in "Take My Breath Away." Cue.
Take my breath away.
First question is, how did you both get involved in the movie?
We both auditioned. Tom auditioned for Thor, and I auditioned for Thor.
And then he played Thor, so
Tom got lucky.
Okay. Chris Hemsworth's performance overall. He did good. Yeah, because he did well with the comedy, but he was also very believable, because sometimes that like over the top British accent where they go like, "I am a god," blah 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 blah, just rings your head in. But he did it actually quite well.
They did use it well. It wasn't too over the top. I wasn't sure if they'd really go for the fish out of water, where he is constantly referring to things by the wrong name and he doesn't understand things and he's confused by modern technology. But they didn't really do any of that.
Not much, but they did enough.
Otherwise, I think they did enough. If they'd gone over the top with it, it would have.
The whole pet store thing was actually quite good. Pet store. I'm not going to show you a clip because that's just going to be a spoiler, but it was quite funny.
But they didn't go over the top with it, because otherwise they weren't making fun of him. They were just letting him be funny.
Yeah. Sorry about the planes, by the way. There was, all of them had a bit of funny side. Loki even. Loki had this inner struggle in himself, which they could have just tiny bit more of that. I'm not going to say anything because that's a spoiler. There's a bit of a, like, I don't know what he was thinking and all of that, like why he was doing.
He was brilliantly ambiguous for a lot of the film,
which was great because that fits the character. You don't know what he's doing. You don't know if he's going to do that or he's going to do this or whatever, because he can do magic as well.
Yes. Okay, Natalie Portman, lady of the moment with her Oscar win. Following that up with a superhero movie, and she's had a lot more success than Halle Berry did when she followed up her win with Catwoman.
Oh yeah, that was awful.
That was bad. That was
awful.
But no, Natalie Portman was good. She's a very likeable, very down-to-earth love interest. Came across as intelligent. Didn't get imperiled.
It wasn't a damsel in distress.
No imperiling, no damsel in distress. She was, you know, without wanting to sound cliched, the sort of independent lady. And she had quite good chemistry with Thor.
Yeah, which I think they could have explored a bit more.
With the love interest. It was, the first half hour of the film pretty much is set on Asgard. So it's a while before the love interest story gets
and they should have done a bit more of that.
I would have liked to have seen a little bit more on Earth, so that they could have expanded more on
the undying love, because like,
and also on how Thor learns valuable life lessons.
Yeah, exactly.
And it all basically sort of spends a weekend on Earth.
Yeah.
It changes him forever.
Which is why, like, what is it? And they should have just a bit more about their love story. What is it about her, especially?
Yeah.
Not just that she's fascinated about him. And it just seems a bit too, like, Twilight-y. Like, just because. But why are they loved? Just because.
Love at first sight.
Love at first sight. Just because.
Love at first
just because.
The comedy
It works. Cat is brilliant.
Cat Dennings.
Thornheim!
New Mexico?
You dare threaten me, Thor, with so puny a weapon?
What? He was freaking me out.
If you have not seen Nick and Nora's Infinite Playlist, just go and see it.
So yeah, there was actually a surprising amount of comedy, especially at the beginning when he first arrived on Earth.
I love that Chris was funny as well.
You're no match for the mighty!
And Stellan Skarsgård was quite good. He didn't have a massive role in this one, but there was a little, which you have to stay for the end credits. Not just because of the Foo Fighters song that I literally stopped in mid-sentence to notice.
Helga's a Foo Fighters fan.
Tiny.
I'm learning to walk again. Well, I believe I've waited long enough. Where do I begin?
In the end credits,
The grand Marvel tradition.
there is a little extra scene of
Leading into the Avengers.
yes, we're not spoiling anything there. No, we're not.
Also, reference about the Avengers, there is a cameo about midway through the film.
Yeah, two cameos that were quite good.
What was the second one?
Well, there's Hawkeye, the Avengers, very much so, but there's Stan Lee.
Jeremy's. Oh, yeah, of course.
Yeah, Stan Lee.
But yeah,
he has to be there.
Jeremy Renner's first appearance as Hawkeye, who's going to be one of the Avengers. He's the only one of the Avengers who hasn't.
I have to stop up here. I thought that was a bit lackluster.
It was a bit pointless, to be honest.
It was a bit like,
it was
why?
More, let's shoehorn him in here so that the audience are vaguely familiar with who he is when the Avengers film comes
Which is like, if you don't know who Hawkeye is,
who's this guy suddenly with a bow and arrow.
Yeah, exactly.
For about 3 minutes.
So this one is basically just for the fans that know the Avengers, that know who Hawkeye is.
I think Jeremy Renner will be really good in the role, but I don't think he was necessarily needed in this film.
Not at all.
I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a good laugh. It was a good, fun action movie. Had some good action sequences, good script, good acting. I would give it 4 top hats.
In my opinion, Thor is definitely recommendable. The good acting, not exaggerated, good fight scenes, good cinematography as well. But it would have gotten a classic if some tweaks had been done to the plot a bit, and if some of the cinematography had been just a tiny bit better and not been so askew all the time, not needed. I would give it like a 3.5 because it's a very, very good film, but it's just some things lacking.